Somebody asked me to start doing videos like this, so I think I'm going to start touching back on this stuff. I've already talked about this stuff probably 20 times before, but we're going to do it again. Um, the way our society was designed and our government institutions were designed was for maximum individual liberty. What does that mean? That means in our Constitution, which is the people's restriction on government, not restriction on the people, um, if there's two or more conflicting clauses, the one that leaves the people with the most liberty is the one that trumps. So you have the supremacy clause as an example, but then you also have Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 trumps the supremacy clause. The federal government doesn't have the jurisdiction to create national sweeping laws as they do. We have all privileges and immunities in one state as we do the many states, and we also have our rights. So if a state like Ohio was to create a law that was restrictive to the people or unconstitutional, the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to strike that law down, which the Supreme Court has failed throughout its history. That's why we're at where we're at for the most part today. So if Ohio made a restrictive law and the Supreme Court strikes that law down, the people are left with what? Liberty. What we've seen happen is the Supreme Court has failed in its duty to strike these laws down. What the founders didn't anticipate was that all three branches of government would be in on the take. And that's where our society has failed, our government has failed. Our society has failed because it's ignorant of the facts, it's ignorant of our Constitution. Most people are ignorant of what it even is. Go ask them. Ask the next person you see, what is the Constitution? It's a simple question. The vast majority of people will say something stupid like, oh, it's a piece of paper. Which, okay, I give them that, but that's not what it actually is. It's the people's restriction on government. That's what the Constitution is. Simple answer, but most people don't know that. And they surely don't know they have a duty to enforce it. This is why you see people supporting things like national reciprocity as an example. They support it because they believe the person who's already asked permission from government, can I please carry a firearm, government? And government says, yes, you can, and gives you your deed or your certificate so you can carry a firearm, are now begging to be able to carry their firearm in any of the states. What should have happened is that the Supreme Court should have struck down all laws making it illegal throughout the many states to carry a firearm in that state without a permit. You shouldn't need a permit. Again, the Supreme Court has failed, and it has failed because it is a co-conspirator with the executive branch and legislative branch in controlling you. Facts are facts. If people knew how free they were actually supposed to be, I'm not sure they can handle it though. People they're like cattle for the most part. You should be able to do anything that you want to do as long as you're not violating the next person's rights. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't care what it is. Then somebody's gonna say, well, do you think you should be able to own a nuke? Yep, sure do. If you can afford it, you can maintain it, more power to you. If I live next door to you and you have the centrifuges and shit in your backyard and you create this nuclear bomb, I have the freedom to leave. I don't have to live there. And I know people are going to say, well, you should be able to be free to live on your own land. I completely agree with that. But you also make the choice where you live. So there's that. But we've allowed our government to control us, take over us, convince us that freedom isn't what it is. We've been sold the illusion of freedom in our lifetimes, our parents' lifetimes, grandparents' lifetimes, even great-grandparents' lifetimes. It's just been an illusion of freedom. Being free to do as you're told is not freedom. People believe it is, though. And then they want to bitch and moan and scream and holler about what form of tyranny is best suited for the country. That's the left and right lie. So now you have the people who, for example, support constitutional carry again, are supporting everything they claim to be against because they are supporting the federal government in creating these unconstitutional laws. I'm not even talking about it being restrictive and unconstitutional for the fact of the Second Amendment. It's unconstitutional because that Congress doesn't have the jurisdiction to create national sweeping laws. And when you support a law saying that it does, you are then giving it the power to control over that. So what we're going to see 50 years from now is if you don't have a permit in this country, you don't have the right to keep and bear arms. That's what we're going to see. And we're already working toward that. People are focused on them taking the guns, and it's not about the guns. I mean, it is to a certain degree, But it's about the right to keep and bear arms, which is two totally different things. Two different things. We're talking about property and we're talking about a right. People don't understand that either. That's another video. But eventually, that's what you will see. You'll see so many people have bowed to the government and begged for permission to carry firearms through permits. And now the federal government possibly creates national reciprocity that in the end they can take who's left our rights away. And they'll do it through what? Fear. They will instill so much fear in you that you will not exercise your rights. You will do this or else. And we see it every day now. And people fall for it. The people that get permits, anybody that has a permit, I'll say it this way. Up until this video, watching this video, if you've watched this video and you have a permit, you are an enemy. You're exactly what you claim to be against, because you are begging government for permission in order not to have to sacrifice. Because you fear death or jail or whatever it is, whatever your choice is, you always have the last say. Some people are like, well, I'd rather be dead than go to jail. Well, you have the last say in that. Do what you do, boo-boo. But don't beg government for permission. Don't do that, because when you do that, you're only making it harder on those who won't do that. And those who won't do that are seeking just to be free. They just want to be left alone. But when you buy into everything you claim to be against by doing things like getting a concealed carry permit, you're exactly what you claim to be against. And I know most people aren't going to see it that way, but that's how it is. I mean, the vast majority of the country, I would guesstimate it's over 99.5%. I would say it's greater than that. Have no idea what rights are, have no idea what freedom is, has no idea what the Constitution is or what it says. This is why you still see people buy the Civil War lie. The Civil War is about what we're dealing with right now today. The federal government stepping in and saying, you're going to do this. And the South said, no, we're not. We're sovereign states. The federal government only exists because of the states. The states have authority over the federal government, not the other way around. And what we're seeing happen, and what we've seen happen since the Civil War, even a little prior to it, is that the federal government wants to rule over the states. And if you go back in history and you look at documentation, actual documentation like the Anti-Federalist Papers, go read them. Their main concern was the federal government eventually ruling over the states, because they felt the Constitution gave the federal government too much power. In order to rectify that, they wanted to ratify the Constitution with and amend it with the Bill of Rights. Originally, there was I forget the number now. I think it was over 120 something proposals. They whittled it down to 12. The states ratified it 10. But people don't even know what the rights are. The Ninth Amendment of all of our rights is probably, in the Bill of Rights, is probably the most important. The government doesn't dictate what rights we have. That's because we have the right to do whatever we choose, as long as we're not violating the rights of the next person. I may do a series on each amendment, what it means, how they're violating it, and what we can do about it. But in the end, until we enforce them, it's our duty to enforce the Constitution. It's not going to change. But again, back to the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists are worried about the federal government ruling over the states, which is exactly what we see today. That's why we had the Bill of Rights. That's why the 10th Amendment specifically is what it is. Go anywhere in our the Constitution for the United States. It's not. It's supposed to be for. And tell me where it says the federal government has the jurisdiction to create laws that can be enforced within the states. It doesn't exist. At this point, in all honesty, I believe that is too far gone to save as a whole, which isn't really what we should be concerned about anyway. We should be concerned about saving the states. So now we have to focus on what state to save. I and at least one other person I know, possibly two other people I know, are heading either already in Tennessee or heading to Tennessee. And I think that I have a lot of reasons around why I'm moving to Tennessee. And maybe they're not the best reasons for everybody. I don't know. I just feel like anytime I do searches for land The land there is, yes, a little bit more expensive than it is in other places, but the resources provided, the atmosphere provided, the environment provided is far better than any other place. I keep falling back to this same area in Tennessee is where I keep landing. So that's where we're going. You know, you can only, when you go down a road and there's roadblocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 roadblocks, whatever it is, you have to get through the first roadblock in order to be able to defeat the second roadblock. The first roadblock's the problem. We have to get the states on board with kicking the federal government out, quit accepting funds from the federal government, because those funds are just from the people. If you look at the money and how it's divided between the states, the state, even as unconstitutional as it may be, if the states just tax the people, they wouldn't need the money from the federal government. I'm not saying that that's the solution. I'm just saying it's just evidence that's there right in front of your face, though. The states allow the federal government, through threats of force and violence, to tax the people and then give that money back to the states in order to bribe them to be under the federal government's control. When realistically, the states could tax the people, not that I'm saying they should, they just could, and kick the federal government out completely. But it's all about control in the end. And that's what you're going to see. It won't be long. You know, we're already seeing where this kind of just turned into a rant video, I guess. We're already seeing where you no longer elect a president; they're selected, and then they're a dictator for 4 years. They do what they want by executive order, and they've made you believe over time, a long enough time frame, that they have the authority to create things like executive orders, and you have to follow them because they are the executive and they are ordering you to do this, and that's just not true. Nobody in the government has authority over you. Nobody. But they've created an atmosphere in the belief system for the people to believe that the government does have authority over us, and it's complete bullshit. It's time to get away from it. It's time to move to as far away from it as we can. Set up our perimeter of do not mess with us, whether that be in a town, a county, a state, and just try to live our lives the best that we can. And they're not going to let us. I know that. I'm sure you know that too. But in the end, you know, something's got to happen.